Well, welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about one of the real hidden gems here in Milford. And as fortune would have it, we're going to get a history lesson, because not too many people know how little we've invested financially in one of the greatest attractions that people use in Milford for all sorts of reasons. Not just walking, not just biking, but the Milford Trail has really become something that we can be proud of. So why don't we start with introductions?
My name is Reno DeLuzio. I'm chairman of the Milford Upper Charles Trail Committee.
I'm Mike Morris. I'm the current president of the Friends of the Milford Upper Charles Trail.
So now, why don't we start with, what is the Upper Charles Trail?
Well, no, I got to go back 25 years. So my memory is not that great anymore. So I got a little cheat sheet here, because that's a long...
Don't you always?
Yeah, right, yeah. But so we could have 3 shows on this, but back 25 years ago in 1993, Holliston came up with this idea we should have a multi-community trail, basically on the old railroad beds that ran through 5 towns. So they convinced Metropolitan Area Planning Council to do a feasibility study, and they did. Metropolitan Area Planning Council completed the study in 1997. I'm jumping around now big chunks of time. And what that study did was it looked at 5 towns, Holliston, Sherburne, Framingham, Hopkinton, and Milford, as a 27-mile loop trail. Since that time, Framingham didn't want to participate, and Ashland got substituted for Framingham. So given that feasibility study, now we had these 5 towns designated, but the plan was that each town would take care of its own segment. So I was town planner, I think, in 1997, when the chairman of our Conservation Commission, who was part of this original group...
Now, was that Paul Revere, or...?
No, that was Robert Buckley. And he went to the selectmen and he said, we should get started on this project. So the selectmen called me in. Of course, they're my boss. They said, Reno, spend some time on this. So I did. That's how I got this thing going back in 1997. A committee was formed. We started with 7 members. It finally grew to as many as 20. And then we're down now to 11 members. And believe it or not, let's see, 5 of those members have been serving for 21 years.
Oh, wow.
I'm one of them. 3 have been serving for 18 years. 1 have been served for 16, 1 for 8, and 1 for 7. And Mike Brashani, which is our Park and Recreation Director, he retired, not resigned, he retired, and he served for 18 years too. So we've had people who stood on this project now for quite a bit of time. It's quite, I think we were competing with the Milford Pond Restoration Project for the longest capital project in town. So I think we're running neck and neck with that project.
But now, it's 6 miles in Milford, correct?
6.5.
6.5.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing is trying to explain to somebody where the snake winds its way around.
Okay. You want me to go try that?
I was going to say, why don't you explain where it starts? Because for some of us, it was one section. Okay, now let's build another section. Right. It was even hard to figure out when you said, well, we're going to take this house and we're going to go through this guy's backyard. And
let's see. The best thing to do is start at one end. So we'll start at the Holliston town line. Okay. There's a condominium development there called Zane Ridge. And that's right at the border between Milford and Holliston. Now we're heading toward Milford, and we go down the National Grid power line right away to Route 109, cross 109, to Veterans Memorial Drive, which is behind now the Big Y shopping complex. And we're heading now towards Milford again, Haywood Street. We get to Haywood Street, cross Haywood Street. We get to Mount Pleasant Street, which is at the rear of the Sacred Heart Church. Then you have to sidewalk your way up to Main Street, cross over Main Street in front of the Sacred Heart Church, to the commuter parking lot that's there, and there is the first trailhead. Now we're at Pheno Field. So now we progress along the Charles River at Pheno Field.
Oh, wait a minute. Across from Sacred Heart, that parking lot.
Yeah, at the end of that
You still have to
parking
go up Main Street, because doesn't it run along Dunkin' Donuts?
Well, that's a spur.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
spur.
I haven't got to the spur yet.
Okay,
All right,
sorry.
So it gets a little bit more complicated. So now we're at the Pheno Field pool, and then we go by the Pheno Field pool toward Diller Street, cross Diller Street, along Louisa Lake, behind the old Joe Consigli property, and the Shadowbrook condominium complex is in that area. We head behind the water company, which is on Diller Street, behind their property. We head up now towards Route 85 and the 495 overpass on Route 85. We go under the overpass.
Yeah, that's when I'm getting off 495. I know that people are walking or biking across. I mean, the good news is you love to see the traffic. The bad news is there's enough traffic of cars. Now you got all these people too.
Right. So we cross those two exchanges on the 495, and then now we're heading now toward, in fact, new development that's going in what they call Deer Street. It's a side road off of Route 85. They're building the restaurant depot, commercial complex, plus a 40B project is going in there as well.
So now if I go all the way up 85, it seems to end there.
No,
The Milford part ends there, right? Or
yeah, now keep going now, and then you got to cross Route 85 going towards Hopkinton.
right.
That's another flashing light there. When you cross there, now you head off to the Hopkinton town line, and at that end, there's a parking lot.
That's because that's the one I'm used to. As I was coming from Hopkinton, the
Maybe I should
parking
have
lot.
started the description from Hopkinton.
Well, but
Yeah.
there's the parking lot there, and I always think it ends there, but that's really the beginning of the Hopkinton leg.
Yes, that's right. At the end of ours and the beginning of theirs. Yeah. So that's a 6.5 mile. Now, go back to the swimming pool on Pheno Field. There's a spur that goes out to Main Street and exit Main Street at Dunkin' Donuts. You cross Main Street there, now you're heading toward the senior center. And so this trail dead ends at the rear of the senior center.
How cool.
The idea was that we wanted to have the seniors direct access from their
Yeah, that's
backyard.
what I'm saying. How cool of an idea.
trail.
The seniors then can just walk right out of the senior center
And they do.
and just walk as far as they want.
Right.
I know several programs out of the senior center that do exactly that. They have groups of them, Silver Slippers, I think it was called. At one
Silver
iteration.
Sneakers.
Silver Sneakers.
The silver sneakers,
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's right. Yeah.
They would just walk up along
I
the
say
trail
Silver
and back.
Slipper. I think
Yeah.
that was Fanny Fox in a place down in Washington we shouldn't talk about.
Yeah, right, yeah. So yeah, that's the trail we built, and that adds another 0.2 of a mile, but it isn't on the 6.5 mile. So really, we have 6.7 miles of pavement on the ground. But
Now, I remember originally we were all nervous, like, any great idea.
Yeah.
We sit there and say, okay, Reno, how much is this going to cost? How many millions or tens of millions are you trying to get? I mean, 6.5 miles is a pretty substantial amount of pavement you laid down.
yeah, it's a roadway.
It's a roadway.
Yeah, and there's a lot that goes along with getting that
But-
roadway on the ground.
I know a lot of people always worry about, okay, how much is it going to cost us to build? We didn't really have to put a lot of Milford money into this, did we?
No, and relatively speaking, not. In fact, I think I told you this story too. When we started, and we had to go to the selectmen and keep them up to date on our initial work that was being done, and now we had to now put some money on the table. And the selectmen said, well, now everybody starts to get a little bit nervous because we have to pay for this too. I said, yeah, there's going to be some payment. And they said, well, supposing this thing doesn't take off, supposing nobody uses it. I was honest with them. I said, we're not Lexington, a historical site where people go to the Minuteman Trail and enjoy the historic sites around Concord and Lexington. We're not Cape Cod. We're not a recreational community. We're a blue-collar working community, and I have really no idea how it will take off. I said, but national statistics show that this is a very popular project for communities to do for their citizenry. So with all that, and then I said, look, let's not raise the bar very high. Let's just do what we have to do to acquire the corridor, because we only had control over 30% of this 6.5 miles. So we needed to acquire, one way or another, 70%. So if we just acquire the corridor And then if we want to quit, we can, and we'll let the next generation figure out how to build it. But I said, once the corridor's gone, then all our options are lost. So with that, we got the selectmen's approval, then we went to town meeting. I think the first appropriation was for $145,000 to do some initial engineering, environmental permitting assessment. And then it continued to build after the town meeting was very supportive all the way through over this whole 2 decades worth of effort.
I remember the discussion coming up at the FinCom meeting about will we attract people to Milford? And a few of us said, frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a dang if we bring anybody else in. This sounds like something that's good for us.
Yeah,
You know, it wasn't like a tourist, you mentioned a touristy thing.
no.
I never really cared if tourists came to walk our trail.
So anyway, get back to the funding question. There was a program, a federal state transportation program, that had a segment of monies carved out for what they call transportation enhancement projects. This was not proposed as a recreation project. It was an alternate off-road transportation project. So we were able to qualify.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, you got me.
Yeah.
Transportation project?
Yeah. Non-motorized vehicle. Federal Highway has a program for non-motorized vehicle transportation, for bikers especially.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, we're not being a bit economical with the truth if we say this is a transportation corridor?
No, I mean, that was perfectly legitimate. They gave you all the criteria.
Oh,
You're gonna build
okay.
a bike. In fact, we did a comprehensive maintenance assessment, and Chapter 90 funds, which we used to help
Highway funds?
Yeah, to help Milford roads. This trail qualifies for those funds as well. You don't get extra money for it. But at
I was going to say, we can spend it on there.
Yeah. But it shows that it really primarily is a transportation project.
Have you told Scotty you can spend money on the...
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
I was going to say, every year he comes in, I mean, we put an extra $500,000 a year
Yeah.
into the highway because the Chapter 90,
No,
with the amount of money they give, Scotty tells us, okay, I can do one street from here to there.
that's right. Yeah. So anyway, and then I said to the select, because I knew about this program and the cost sharing, and it was really 90% state and federal and 10% town. So our contribution, I said at that point, will be no more than 10%. I had to, really convince them, but I wasn't really sure either. But anyway, so it was a high probability that would happen. And so that's how we proceeded. And at the end now, we're finally getting to close the books. It's a $6.5 million project. It's about $1 million a mile. And Milford's contribution 18 years later was 9%, $580,000. So that's the financial picture.
But that's pretty amazing. I mean, $500,000, when we grew up, you could have bought Milford, they would have thrown in
Yeah.
Hopedale or Mendon, right? But, in today's age, $500,000, that's an incredible benefit that the townspeople, and again, I have nothing against out-of-towners coming and enjoying, but when you sold me, it was because this was something great for our seniors,
Oh, yeah.
for our, early families, because I used to walk up and down the street with my little red wagon and my daughter and my mother,
Yeah.
but there was no, we're walking on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while you run into a sidewalk, you're excited. There was no real place like the trail where we could go down with her little red wagon
Yeah.
and just spend time walking with my daughter.
Yeah, and you see, it's not like an athletic facility. This facility is good for all ages, all abilities. In fact, it had to be all ADA compliant, American Disabilities Act compliant. We could have no grades greater than 5%. You say, well, why is it cost? People thought, well, you just get a bulldozer in there.
You know something? The little things that you don't think of, like a 10% grade.
Oh, well, 5% really.
Well,
isn't
no, but
very
I'm just
good.
saying a
Yeah.
10% grade that
Yeah.
most people would not have an issue with. Then you say, okay, somebody in a wheelchair or something,
Right.
A walker.
a walker,
perhaps.
some of the,
Yeah.
the people who built Milford, our seniors,
Yeah.
10% grade can be very taxing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then, of course, you know what the golden rule is. Usually it's help your neighbor as you.
I thought you were going to say, Reno, you only have 10 minutes?
No, the golden rule, as far as this project is concerned, is those who have the gold make the rules. So Mass Highway is going to fund it, so we had to comply with all their requirements, and it's built to criteria like a roadway is built. It's not just getting a bulldozer in there and putting some pavement down. There's a lot of permitting, environmental permitting.
But you had some, if I remember right, there were times when you said, I want you to put some money aside in case I can't get this land donated, that we might have to buy it.
I might have. I don't recall.
Oh,
that,
I remember.
though.
When it
Okay.
comes to money, I remember
Yeah,
that money.
yeah.
But you came through. I mean, down by the railroad, we didn't have to buy a lot of that land, if I remember right.
No, in fact, we had two substantial segments that didn't cost us a nickel. The water company donated 1.8 miles of easement because they had acquired the old rail bed from the back of their property and all the way up to the quarries, so to the Hopkinton town line, and they gave us a permanent easement to put the trail. In fact, we have a water supply pipe that goes from Echo Lake underground all the way to the pumping station on Diller Street, and the trail runs, and they put that under the old rail bed, and our trail is on top of that. So that was one substantial piece of property that we got at no cost. And then National Grid, that segment of the power line between Route 109 and going towards Holliston, that's a 1 mile segment, and we got a 99-year no-cost lease from National Grid to put the trail under their power line. So 2.8 miles of the 6.5 miles was at no cost. And then we really had quite a number of individual property owners. The bottom line is the town property acquisition cost was $70,000.
I was going to say, couldn't have been much because you didn't get a lot of money to spend on eminent domain or anything on that line.
No, we had a couple of eminent domain takings. One of them was the CSX parcel from, in fact, the town wanted to take the whole thing too, from Depot Street out to Fino Field, around the pool. And Jerry Moody, town council, was working on that, so we combined our effort because the trail was going to use it too. But that was a friendly eminent domain. The titles, they get so mixed up over time, the only way you can clear them is both parties agree to an eminent domain taking.
I mean, realistically, I've never seen, not that it hasn't happened, but town meeting are Milford people. I've never seen the town meeting go against a homeowner. You know, if you had an ugly eminent domain, I don't know that, you know, you get a homeowner come in and say, please don't take my house.
Well, we had one of those. Not so much the house.
No.
But yeah, we had 3 eminent domain takings. The CSX was a friendly eminent domain. Then we had property, again, around the Fino Field segment going out to Diller Street with a development corporation that bought Stylon properties and all of that. And the town had an easement over their property for a sewer line, and the trail committee thought that the town had the easement, and we put the trail over it. Turns out the town never took the easement. They just put the sewer line in.
Oh.
So now, of course, now this property owner, developer, didn't want to give us an easement. So we had to go through the eminent domain taking. Make a long story short, we settled with him eventually. And the other one was Joe Consigli on Diller Street. Joe had a gravel pit that he's used there for years and years. Thought he had $5 million worth of gravel to take out of it, yet we tried to convince him he didn't. And we'd offer him a fair price, and he would come right up to the line, and then he would not, agree, so we had to take it.
But again, that's not taking somebody's home.
Oh, no, there was none of that, no.
That's why I say I've not ever seen town meeting go against a Milford resident who says, please don't hurt my home.
Yeah.
How many articles have come up where financially the town could have done a little better or whatever, but we're a community.
Yeah.
It'd have to be a real ugly mess for me to vote to take away your home.
Yeah. Al, to be honest with you, over this whole 2 decades, a lot of stars had to line up right to make this happen. And we were, for every step of the way, some of it was grueling, but we've managed to work our way through it because of people still wanting to cooperate. There were very few who didn't want to cooperate. We had a heck of a time with National Grid. We negotiated with National Grid for 4 years before we could get them to agree to a lease. So, in fact, the funding agency at the Mass Highway, Mass DOT, said, look, we'll give you guys 3 more months. If you don't get this resolved, we're going to take the money and give it to another town. We've got a long list of people waiting for funds here. So finally, Jerry Moody and we got the representative and senator involved, and we got it all together at Mass Department of Transportation and finally worked out a 99-year lease. So that worked out.
I mean, that must be, go to National Grid and say, we'd like you to give us land and spend $100,000 doing it or more. Because if they get their legal team involved,
Yeah.
for them to say yes,
Yeah.
probably costs $100,000
Well,
of internal expense.
A little bit of history. So you know what was discouraging? I went to a meeting, it wasn't on trails, but it was some regional meeting that I attended when I was a town planner, and National Grid was there. And they handed out a promotional brochure showing, how they're a good public servant to the community, and they do community projects and so forth and so on. And on the brochure was a person on a bicycle on their right-of-way. So I took that brochure. I said, boy, this is going to be a piece of cake. They're advertising that they will cooperate by this brochure. Well, it was fine. We put together the engineering plans. We sent it to their engineers. The engineers loved it because they got this old gravel road going down there. They have to keep maintaining it. Now we give them this nice paved corridor that the trucks can go on very easily. And so, but now the lawyers get involved.
Hey.
And then the clock starts running till all the I's
Well,
are
I mean,
dotted.
I bet Brian Murray thought it wouldn't be hard to have National Grid fix 2 broken poles.
Yeah, right, yes.
And look at the crusade he went on
That's
for
true,
how many years he killed himself.
Yeah.
And if you look at broken poles, seems like a no-brainer that they should be happy to repair them or replace them. Yet, I can't remember how many years you'd hear Brian all the time.
Right. Yes.
There's 180, there's 100, well, he's got it down to 165. But if it wasn't for, the selectmen pushing and driving it, I bet we'd have double poles to this day.
And more.
And more.
Well, anyway, but at the end, it all worked out. Both parties were very satisfied. And so now sometimes I get calls. They call National Grid because other communities want to get on their. In fact, National Grid has no problem crossing their power line. But when you want to run down 1 mile of it, that's a whole other story, right? Because their primary purpose, obviously, is to provide reliable electrical power, not a recreation facility.
Yeah, but realistically, it's not like you're driving. I could see them being worried that if you created a lane for cars,
Oh, yeah.
that somebody's going to hit a pole
Yeah.
and cause problem. But, even your bicycle, no matter how fast you drive it into a pole, I think the pole wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Concrete barrier and a pole versus a bicycle, not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to win that battle.
Of course, there's liability concerns that they're worried about, too, so.
Oh, that's true. I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah, that we all worked out that out in the lease.
So now, the trail itself, I mean, when you listen to Parks and Highway, they talk about it being 5 miles wide by 9,000 miles long that they have to maintain. God bless them. I always love the presentations because it's like, Milford isn't that wide. But how wide? Describe the trail. You're president. What are you president of?
It's, by the numbers, 6.5 miles long. Roughly 8 to 12 feet wide, depending on exactly the conditions. Sometimes it's a little more narrower than others. But you're looking at roughly 12, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Reno, but roughly 8 to 12 feet wide of pavement. And then I think a 2-foot buffer of stone dust, which is now slowly turning to grass on each side. And that's roughly what we're looking at for in terms of maintenance. It's coming along, mowing the grass, at least for vegetation control. You come along, cut back so there's nothing hanging over. Pavement issues with tree root encroachment causing the pavement to buckle upwards and creating a mini speed bump, let's say, causing a crash hazard, that sort of thing. Or the reverse, which would be a small pothole coming in and also being a trip hazard. So that's really what we're looking at in terms of like the dimensions of the trail here.
But 12 feet's a good width. I mean, you
Yeah,
got enough.
we got some comments. People wish it was 16 feet wide.
Yeah.
But first of all, the corridor wasn't that wide. You couldn't do it anyway.
No.
So, but yeah, it is. Well, Mass Highway, again, they make the rules. It's got to be a minimum width.
Well, but you know,
12
the other
feet is-
thing that would worry me is when you look at square footage, having 50% wider sounds initially great till you go to Scotty and say, okay, eventually, you know, it's
Yeah.
when we first started out and you said, I got all these volunteers and they're going to maintain it. We're making notes. Okay, in the future, we better budget maintenance
Because
because
that isn't going to happen.
you can't get
Absolutely.
enough volunteers
And-
to maintain 6 miles.
And the
of tra-
things volunteers can't do. They can't treat pavement. They can't do drainage work. You know, they can
Well,
do.
but even the Parks Department, was it Parks or Highway that we had to fund the octopus thing? You know, that a regular lawnmower just wasn't going to work. They had to get the
Parks.
tractor with the long arm to
Yeah.
actually cut the vegetation back.
Yeah,
Right.
because that's used on roadways too. So it's come
Well, yeah, but still, the catalyst was that
Yes.
they needed it for the trail.
Yeah.
And it became obvious how well accepted the trail was. So at that point, you know, it wasn't hard to come up with funding to maintain something like that.
See what I mean about the stars lining up, right? Yeah.
Now, one of the things that was always, and I'll admit I was scared, is when you said you're going to cross by 109
Oh, we had 6 crossings.
or cross Dilla Street.
Yeah.
I mean, when we grew up, once a day or twice a day, got a car, a couple buggies.
Yeah, right, yeah,
that would
yeah.
come up Dilla
Yeah,
Street.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, you know, it's the Indianapolis Speedway there with the number of cars going through. But it really worried us that, I mean, let's face it, kids aren't the most attentive creatures. You know, that some kid could come screaming across 109
Absolutely.
or Dilla Street,
Yeah.
even if you're doing 25 miles an hour. But you took some steps with lights and,
Yeah, well, we first, our initial design proposal, preliminary plan, showed full-featured stop signals at each of the crossings. And Mass Highway says, we're not going to fund that. We're not even approve it, especially on Route 109 and Route 85, because you can't meet what they call the warrant. The warrant is that you got to show, when you want to put a light at an intersection, you got to show how much vehicular traffic is going in both directions. If it goes beyond higher than a certain amount, it justifies a traffic signal. Of course, now we know how many cars are going up and down Route 85, for example, but the trail isn't built, so we don't know how many pedestrians are crossing. So we try to make that argument that we don't have the data to satisfy the criteria of the warrant. So we looked at other trails and we got data which they had. Some of it was not
trying to
very good.
extrapolate to the
Trying to
best you can.
extrapolate it, and they didn't accept that. So finally we said, looking around to see what other communities have done, they use these flashing beacons, which are not full-featured traffic lights, but as a pedestrian approaches the roadway, there's a sensor that detects it and the lights start flashing.
oh, so those yellow lights, they don't have to hit?
No. There's a push button in case someone walks down a sidewalk is not hitting the
Right.
detector. There's always a push button you can activate those, but they're automatic.
But if there's a kid riding a bike,
Yeah.
that was my biggest worry, is
Yeah.
they're not going to let me stop, let me hit the button. So there's a sensor there to warn me driving down
Yeah.
Dilla Street
Yeah.
that something's coming
Right.
across.
Yes.
Oh, that's really cool.
So, but that sounds great. That now we got an alternate. So we went to Mass Highway at District 3, which is our district. They said, well, we don't have a spec for that. so we can't approve it.
Yellow light blinking.
No, they don't have. So we have, of course, a design consulting firm on retainer. So we asked them to put together a specification. So we did, and we gave it to Mass Highway. We said, how about, because they have to have a generic spec. So you can't say, I want cross alerts equipment. You got to say what the equipment is, all the description of it.
But wait a minute,
so that
in all
anybody-
of Massachusetts, 300 plus towns and cities,
right.
they didn't have a spec for a blinking yellow light?
No, not this kind. So anyway,
I shouldn't be surprised, but
so we did some first on this trail. So we gave them the spec. Now they can use it all over the state. You know, it's not just
they
for
can
us.
use the Reno,
Well,
the
whatever.
Deluzio Memorial spec
It's our engineering
forever.
consultant, Greenman Pedersen. But anyway, so I'm saying there was 101 of these stories that could have stopped this thing dead in its tracks.
So now on there's 6, because I know Dilla
yeah,
Street.
go ahead, yeah.
There's the one that as I come off 495, I'm
Will we
getting on
lead
to
you through them
85.
again? Let me lead you through them.
Well, no, I'm thinking of the crossing.
Yes.
Those two.
You got to start earlier than that, though. Start at Dunkin' Donuts on Main Street.
Oh, okay.
Now you go down Fino Field,
Yeah.
and you cross Dilla Street.
That's
There's one
number
there.
2.
Then you got to cross Route 85 further north. That's 3.
Yep.
All right? Now come back again and get behind the Sacred Heart Church, and now you start heading toward Holliston. You got to cross Haywood Street.
Oh,
You got to cross Route 109.
that's the one that the Dilla Street and the 109 are the ones that scared me the most.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 109 is a 5-lane roadway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, we now have 11 years of experience and we haven't had an accident. So I don't know if that's anything, but, you know, it's a matter of probability. But we took every precaution we could, and other communities are faced with the same problem. They don't make this equipment just for Milford. They're used all over the country. So the track record is really pretty good. And the danger is some young person doesn't, even an adult, I've seen adults don't stop. We have stop signs for the pedestrians, you know, blinking lights for the traffic. And we have a red blinking light for the biker. And they just keep going.
Well, I mean, more than once, I know as I come Dilla Street, I'm slowing down.
Yeah, people have got.
You know, I may be blazing along at 30 miles an hour,
Yeah.
but I'm going to slow down to
Yeah.
15 or 20 just in case. So I think a lot of it too is people, you know, Milfordians have gotten used to the fact that there's a good chance somebody's kid's going to
Yeah.
come screaming across. And, you know, saying it was his fault he hit my car, I don't care. You just, you know, you slow down, you know. Nobody can go fast on Dilla Street anymore. There's too many cars. But
Right.
even if you're blazing along,
Right.
breaking that 20-mile-an-hour barrier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You still slow down a little bit and kind of double check.
So our project installed 6. Now we have one more that got installed recently, and that's to this new project off of Route 85, with a trail car, that old Deer Street road that was there.
The 40B housing
Yeah.
thing? Okay.
Yeah, so the trail crosses that entry roadway into that development, and the developers of that installed the flashing beacon at that crossing. as
You got
part of
them
their
to do that?
Yeah.
That's even better. I like that.
Well, 40B, you know, he says some negotiation that goes along.
There
No,
is?
this was before the 40B. When the developer proposed the restaurant depot, then he was going to start opening up the land, and the planning board, of course, my committee sent a letter to the planning board saying, make sure you see what you can do to get this flashing beacon, and planning board did that, so that was okay.
So now, I mean, obviously, you think about how long is the pavement or the hardtop going to last? You know, 20, 30 years?
Well, it's like any pavement in New England. I mean, you know, we're susceptible to Mother Nature, and not so much
Frost heaves.
there's no vehicle traffic other than maintenance vehicles, so it doesn't take a beating from trucks. There was keeps coming up periodically, why don't you plow the trail in the wintertime? Well, first of all, it beats up the pavement. Scott has enough problems plowing the roadways, let alone this. And once you plow it, now you got to make sure it's safe for icing
Then you got to
conditions.
salt it.
Right.
Then you got to.
Right. So you get deterioration more.
But you know, the biggest thing I'd worry about is we just bought Scotty a new toy. You know, a sidewalk, a little baby snowblower thing.
Yep.
Because one of the biggest problems he has, obviously, is you got to have the sidewalks. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that most of the school days that are called off are not because of the roads. Scotty's got that down to a science.
Right.
But if you don't plow the sidewalks, where are the kids going to walk?
Yeah.
Right on the roads.
Yep.
So, you know, taking offline, you know, not that I don't love the trail, but taking the piece of equipment offline that's doing the sidewalks for the kids to do the trail doesn't seem like a good deal to me.
Yeah, so the committee keeps getting faced with this, and we keep giving the same rationale. We'll just leave it for the winter recreational people to use it in the winter. That you're going to get 9 months out
Buy
of it.
snowshoes.
Yeah, and there have been. People have been on there with
Oh, yeah.
cross-country.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Snowshoes, yeah.
Cross-country skiers.
Yeah.
you've seen
Oh,
it
I hadn't
all.
thought about that. The cross-country.
Yeah.
Yeah, skiing to me is gravity-fed.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
cross-country thing, they work too hard.
Yeah. You want to burn off a few calories, you try that for a
yeah.
while.
Yeah.
No, I tried that once. It's like, wait a minute, this is too much work.
Yeah, it is.
I can't keep my rotundness if I try and get in that much shape.
So that's one issue with the pavement we have to deal with. Although the base of the trail was, like I say, built to roadway standard, so it's not deficient at all.
But when was the hardtop first laid down?
The oldest one now is 11 years old.
And
We-
except for frost heaves, have we
Well,
had
we
any?
haven't had that condition. We've got a condition now that's starting to show up, root encroachment.
Roots?
Yeah. Our initial proposal was to cut a wider swath of trees on either side of the corridor. Well, the environmental review and all that stuff says, no, you can't get
Yeah,
it.
you got to be
Right,
careful.
right.
You can't defoliate.
So we got
the whole
some
place.
trees that are too close to the trail than they should be, and now we're starting to see root. In fact, when we briefed your committee, Finance Committee, on the comprehensive maintenance assessment, that's the thing we have to deal with. It's not a lot. It's like at various areas, maybe 450 feet out of 600 miles that have to be attended to over. You have to do it
Yeah,
all
but
in
if
one
you
year.
start
either.
cutting those roots, don't you risk having the wrath of Chucky and as you hurt his trees?
No, if you look at the state statute, the tree warden does not have jurisdiction over the trail.
Oh,
He doesn't have jurisdiction over parks and parklands either. So, yeah, by state statute, the park,
so who owns the trees? Is it Parks Department or?
yeah, well, the town, but the Parks Department is the lead department to maintain it.
Because I'd worry that, if you start cutting too many roots,
Yeah.
you can damage the
Well,
tree.
some trees, we're going to take them down.
Oh, okay.
Because you can cut the roots, they keep coming back.
Right.
Yeah, right. So the idea is to try to get rid of the trees, and obviously you got to take care of the roots that cause damage.
So now, if I was to ask you, Mike, what is the demographic? I mean, who uses the trail? What are they? Is it bikes? Is it walkers?
All of the above. The Friends, even before I became involved with the organization, we used to run regular biannual trail census, basically where we would field a whole lot of people, a lot of volunteers, to station themselves at regular points along the trail. And they would count, like check mark for a bicyclist, a trail walker, a person in a wheelchair, a rollerblader, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't done those lately, pointing largely to the lack of a volunteer base, but the last one we did, I think it was all ages, all types of non-motorized transportation, let's just say. And I forget what the numbers were, but it was easily on a summer day, weekend day, Saturday in the summer, several thousand people using the Milford
Wow.
section of the trail. So
But
that-
the numbers run around 2,000.
right.
A day?
Good. Yeah.
In the summer on the weekend.
Yeah.
No, but still, I mean,
Those.
that's 7-8% of the town.
Well, there's other towns that come in and use it too. We're not the only ones that use it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, but then you could also say some of the Milford people you don't get to the Hopkinton on 85 and say, oh, okay, now that's got cooties, I can't take a step over there.
Yeah,
So
no.
some of our people are going to use theirs
Oh yeah.
Certainly.
the same way as their people.
Because this was federally funded, you cannot exclude anyone.
Yeah, but no matter what, I guess what I'm saying is when you say 2,000 and they're not all from Milford, well, I can look in Hopkinton or, Hollis, the other
yeah.
part. Well, they got some Milford people that just kept walking just to see
Sure.
what's new.
Absolutely.
No, you got to discount those numbers a little bit because some people walk by the counter twice.
No.
So you got to be careful. So you got to discount those. No, but just on a relative, seeing how it's doing over time, it's a trend kind of a statistic.
Yeah, but even if it was 1,000 people,
Yeah.
I mean, out of 28,000 in Milford,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a pretty significant amount of people taking advantage of the trail.
Right. I recall a quote from Robert Wideneck, the chair of the Holliston Trail Committee. He remarked, I think it was 2015, I'm not sure of the exact year, but he remarked that when we did the census figures, the 2,000 figure for the Milford section on one day in summer was originally forecast to be the total trail use for the entire loop through all 5 towns. And so the Milford section alone has surpassed that amount. It just shows you how many people are drawn to this. They're not terribly much in the way of, recreational opportunities. The sidewalks are limited or crumbling in town or other towns. And as far as a safe way or safe place to go biking, you can take your life on some roads. I do myself, but or you can go on 6.5 miles.
But if you think about
protect
it,
the trail.
when I walked down, I loved when my kids were small. We'd bundle them all up in their blankets and take the little red wagon, and you just walked. But, you always had to carry a big flashlight and everything to make sure that, because at 4 o'clock it's getting dark.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That you don't want somebody who's not paying attention. I mean, the trail, what's the biggest danger I have? A militant squirrel?
Probably. Yeah, pretty
Well,
much.
Al, when we started out, I mean, the rumors were flying fast and furious, but all this riffraff that's going to come into town of Milford and
Oh, the drug needles, I remember.
the crime is going to
Oh,
be.
the people are going to get mugged and...
I said,
Stories, yes.
when we connect to Holliston, or they connect to us, the people in Holliston are no different than we
Yeah.
are, right? We're all the same. The national statistics show that if you had a certain percentage of a crime in your community, that percentage does not increase because you have a bike trail. You have the same percentage of crime whether you have a bike trail or you don't. So it's a community-wide
Well, I
effort.
can't imagine that if I'm and again, I don't understand the law, but if I'm a robber, I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
How much cash do you carry when
No.
you're jogging? It's not like you're going to have people carrying wads of valuables or,
Right.
of all the places I'm going to go to try and rob somebody. You and your bicycle shorts, probably not the first thing that comes to mind.
No, so that hasn't been a problem.
No.
Now, you got people who walk, people with walkers, people with bicycles.
Yeah.
Is that an issue? That you got, bicycles go faster than old men like me.
There's always been concern since even before I became a member of the Friends. There's always the rule, though, that the basic rule of etiquette, you follow this essentially like you would on the road. You stay to the right, and then you pass on the left. Slower traffic generally sticks to the right, and then if you, as a bicyclist, when you're coming along, you're supposed to be on the right-hand side of the trail, too. You come along, you say on your left, and you pass slowly, assuming it's safe to do so.
Oh, okay.
Much like on a road, the bicyclist is the slowest one, and you take the right. You stick
Well, I
to
would
the right,
think-
and the cars can pass on
But
the
Mike,
left.
I would
and
think
it's safe.
bicyclists are more sensitive because they're usually the ones getting picked on by the cars. So now they're the big, fast-moving vehicles.
Yeah.
So they've got to be a little more sensitive towards the slower ones because that's usually them.
And there's always a few that will treat it like a dedicated cycle track to go blast out, get their latest best times, personal best, but that's the minority. Those are the ones that stick out. We remember, negative experiences much more readily than positive experiences.
Yeah, but those can't
So,
be Milford people.
perhaps. I
No,
have
but think about it,
idea.
Reno.
I have no idea.
The odds are you're going to recognize somebody. If you're from Milford
that's
and you're blasting down, you're going to go by somebody who knows you. And will call your mother, or your aunt, or say something someday saying, hey, Reno, you almost ran over my grandson. So I can't imagine that a lot of Milfordians abuse it because it's all their neighbors.
And I have to emphasize, that's really the minority. It's really not the norm here.
No, most people using the bike trail respect each other's space.
Yes.
It's just common courtesy. There's not, and of course now we have a dog leash requirement that you got to keep your dog on a leash. Which other trail shouldn't let the dog run free.
But that's all in Milford, right?
Yeah.
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 There's nothing
No.
onerous or
No.
more restrictive about if I'm walking my dog on Congress Street, it's the same rules as I'm walking on the trail.
Yep,
We have
that's right.
signs that say leash your dog and scoop the poop, but we do that only because that's where the dog walkers go. You know, you don't have that posted at random
Scoop
points on
your
town.
poop?
Yes.
Yeah. We have doggy stations along the way.
Which-
Keep up with.
yeah.
Well, that was one of the questions that came up about, you know, budgeting some labor to clean the trail. You know, and you can't really ask volunteers to volunteer to be poop detail. You know, hey, we don't like that one. That's a new volunteer we don't like. You got poop detail.
But that's one thing the Friends do. They provide the
little
doggy
baggies?
stations, yeah,
Yep.
and the bags.
But do people abuse it?
Abuse it how?
Like, let their dogs leave presents?
Some
and,
do, yeah.
But again, some.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not.
No, not.
You can't eliminate that to zero. There's always going to be some element of that, but
You're always going to have, no matter what, well, I can't say a rectum. Rectum has a purpose. You're always going to have a hemorrhoid that sticks out now and again.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I would say once the receptacles, the trash cans were put in, and all of the doggy stations were put in, the incidence of that, you know, being left on the ground or being tossed in someone's backyard went down to almost nothing.
Ah,
So it really is a dramatic difference.
And
so now who cleans the trash receptacles? Is that Parks Department?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the bags are biodegradable, so if they throw them away, they're not throwing plastic in the woods.
Now, you mentioned the Friends of the Trail.
Yes.
Now, I became a friend when Margaret Myatt guilted me to say, I don't see a sticker on your car.
For the library?
No, for the
Oh,
trail.
for the trail, oh, yes, yeah.
So she kept sending me a bill every year saying,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
can't
That's
help
right.
us out,
Yeah.
at least help by donating.
Yes.
So even people who don't have the time, whatever reason, to become a friend, an active friend.
Yeah,
I mean, you still welcome old people like me who will write a check
Yeah.
absolutely.
and help out so that we buy more bags and do more things.
Yep.
Pays for the website fees, maintenance, pays for the doggy bags, pays for supplies that we run through for the regular trail claims, which we just had about last weekend.
So, you know, the people that go on the trail, if they want to help, you don't have to require $1 million donation. You can do whatever you can. How do I send it? Where do I go to donate money to the Friends?
Oh, it's on the, what you talk about the website?
Sure. There's the website, which is www.milfordtrail.org, and there's a PayPal link on there. That's the best way to do it. I believe you can also send a check if you prefer writing a check to, I think it's 52 Main Street, Milford. One of our regular volunteers still checks that and deposits it in the...
Well, I mean, that's simple. If you can't remember anything, Town Hall.
Right.
52
Exactly.
Main Street, Town Hall. If you put something on there that says, you know, Milford Trail,
Yeah, Friends of the Trail.
I'm sure that anything that says Milford Trail somehow, I don't know who does the mail, but Rick Villani or somebody in that office will get
Everybody's
them.
got a pigeonhole.
Everybody's got that little
Yeah.
pigeonhole
Yeah.
thing. They'll just throw it in your cubby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the adopter program?
Yeah, this is something that was, I believe, going back to the original days of the Friends. I've only been involved in it since 2011, so I can only speak to that, but it's been a pretty successful...
Only 7 years.
Yeah.
Versus
It's been
21
going on-
for some of my committee
21, so
members.
I'm still the newbie here around
He's a
here,
new
mind
guy.
you.
Guy on the block.
But the adopters are basically local families or businesses that have taken on the responsibility of looking after a section of the trail. We've portioned it out to, I believe, 16. I might be wrong on the count, but roughly 16 pieces, about half a mile to a quarter to a half mile long, where the basic idea it's not a monetary obligation. It's more of a volunteer hours obligation. You would go out. Yourself, members of your organization or your family, depending, will go out and regularly and just walk the trail, look for anything that's amiss, that's excessive amounts of trash or trash you can pick up yourself. Help us out with the trail cleanups. We have a spring one, which we do with Citizens for Milford, and a fall one, and leaf pickup and that sort of thing. So it's really just helping spread the load, and with regular people who commit to doing this at least twice a year. So we don't have to rely on a huge volunteer base for all of
Or
this.
pay a lot of money to have it done.
And the Friends also have a memorial bench program that they manage. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, Mike?
Yep.
The memorial bench program.
Yeah, we have a standard design that's carved out of granite. It's anyone who wants to remember a lost loved one or old Milfordian who passed away. There's a bench program where we order it and you can have it engraved with whatever message you want or a design. More involved, costs more.
Now, can the average Milfordian afford that?
Yeah, we have how many we have now, Mike?
30, 35?
We have 30 benches.
Well, what does the
I
bench
would-
cost?
Roughly, it's gone up over the years as everything. It's roughly 1,700 now.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not out of the question if you really want to memorialize someone who especially was did a special connection to the trail. Like one of our longtime members was Dave Castanelli. I don't know if he was a president, but it was at least a vice president, deeply involved from early on. He has a bench that was put together from his family. It's in a very special spot. It's where Dave used to sit when he was doing the trail census that I marked earlier. So
So for under $2,000, you can help the community, and
Well, it's a pass-through thing. I mean, the Friends only manage the
no,
money.
no.
Yeah,
But what
this
I'm
is
saying,
not a,
Reno, is if somebody wants to remember a loved one,
Yeah,
and at the same token, help the community,
yeah.
providing
it's not exorbitant. You're not talking tens of thousands
No.
of dollars.
no.
And you
very
still have
manageable.
these benches available?
We're running out of space.
Yeah, there are popular spots basically around Pheno Field and Louisa Lake where most of them tend to be. And we can't put anything on the national grid right away because we still have to have the maintenance trucks drive down. You need the full width available. But besides that, the most recent one was actually around Zane Ridge.
It's at the Holliston Inn, the
Right.
condo development
The
off of Route 16,
Yeah,
St. Ridge.
The condo association put that one and they paid for that one and was installed just this summer of 2018. So
Talk to me in the summer. You'll have one less bench to sell.
let
If I
us
c-
know.
if I-
Ray. If you have a spot in mind,
No,
just let us
I
know.
have no clue.
No clue.
They
No
can
clue.
recommend something else. They can
Right.
find something.
No.
Yeah,
But I mean,
it's-
if I can help the town out
Mm-hmm.
that way, count me in. I'll buy a bench or whatever you want to do.
All right.
You know, come spring, show me a place, we'll buy a bench.
Sure.
How do you say no? I mean,
I know.
with everything you're doing, I can rationalize it by saying my sainted mother just passed,
That's a good idea.
so I'll put it in for her.
Excellent.
But at the end of the day, I want to help out.
All right,
Yeah.
good.
So count me in. Come
Excellent.
spring, I'll be in.
Thank you for your support.
What else?
Well, you know, I got enough war stories to fill up two programs. Let me see if I can pick one out for you. Let's see. Okay, we went through the property rights thing with National Grid, the road crossings. Remember I said when we get up to Route 85 from behind the water company, you got to go under the 495 overpass.
Yes.
And you'll notice you have to go up a ramp, and there's a big block wall that separates the trail under that overpass from Route 85. All right, so now our designers get going. We're under contract to build this segment of trail, and all of a sudden, everything comes to a screeching halt. When Target built this store in Milford, they were supposed to do some road mitigation work on Route 85, which they never did. Mass Highway says, hold everything. So now we got equipment on the ground, and the contractor has got to stop. So somebody's cash register is starting to ring up because of this stoppage. So we got our two engineering groups, Target's and ours, and Mass Highway together to work out this problem. It got worked out, but the result is what you see, because our engineers said, you know, the abutments that come down off the bridge on the side to the road, we said, we'll cut that back, because we needed 12 feet to get under that thing, right? So we'll cut that back, and we'll put the trail and put a chain link fence along the roadway. And Mass Highway says, no, you can't cut that abutment, the bridge will fall down.
Oh, a minor inconvenience.
Slight problem there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Reno needs his trail, but the bridge will fall.
All right, so now, you know from your geometry that if you go up a slope, as you get higher and higher on the slope, it get wider and wider.
Wider.
So we had to come up high enough so we could get the proper width. But now, we got to watch out we don't hit our head going under the overpass. So we're constrained in this envelope. Well, anyway, the engineers worked it out. It turns out that when Target went out to bid to do their work, which we had to integrate into, our guy doing the construction won that bid. So he made out okay, got Target to pay for some things.
Even better.
So his delay didn't cost anybody any money, and he made a little bit more on the deal. So that's one. But that's another example of this thing could have come. You know, we were building a chain, right? And you only take one link
bad
missing,
link.
and the whole thing doesn't work, right? So that was one. And the other one was of interest was the senior center spur. When we're putting together the application, I think it was Brian Murray, who's been on my committee forever. He said, you know, we ought to provide this accommodation for the senior center. And we looked at it, we said, yeah, that could be a benefit to us, because the more diverse population you get involved in the project, the better your chances are of getting the money, right? Because there's a lot of competition for this money. They just don't write you a check because you walk in one day and you say you
You
want.
can't just walk in and say, my name is Reno, give me money.
All right, so now that spur from Dunkin' Donuts going to behind the senior center goes through a lot of backyards on Pond Street. And those people on Pond Street thought they owned the riverbed.
Oh.
So we had to break the bad news to them that they
This isn't yours.
No, some of them had built sheds on it and all of that sort of stuff. So we had to deal with 90 abutters on this, believe it or not.
Oh, my Lord.
So we had several meetings of various neighborhoods, and so we got the abutters in, and they had a few representatives. Not all the people on Pond Street showed up, but they designated a representative. And first of all, they didn't want to have anything to do with this, right? They were going to stop it and go to town meeting and all that. I said, oh, wait a minute. I said, you have narrow backyards. You have a stockade fence there now. It's all dilapidated fence. We'll narrow the trail down so we don't take what you think is your backyard.
Even though it isn't.
Even though it isn't. And we'll give you a new stockade fence. And they're having terrible problem with waters in their basement on Pond Street, because all the water coming down from North Bow Street flows down in that
straight
area.
down.
And it runs, get a heavy rainstorm, and runs right into the house. And we'll take care of the drainage. Now, I'm going to swallow a little bit, because that's not a trivial thing. So if you walk down that spur, you'll see new stockade fences, you'll see the trail, and you'll see a big detention basin where they had like a railroad car turnaround. So there's a little wider space. We could open it up and put a detention basin, and we diverted all the water into that basin under Pond Street, through an easement through one person's property, under Pond Street, and then into the Charles River, which it ended up anyway.
Wow.
So that quarter of a mile cost us more aggravation than the other six miles. So that was another story.
But as we talk, I want you to really, really think about everything Milford has to offer. This is one of the wonderful things. More amazing how little it cost us to bring such a benefit. I mean, when you talk about 1,000, 2,000 people using the trail on a day, when you talk about mothers in strollers, dads in wagons, Mikes on bicycles, really does cut across all of Milford. If you can, please get down and look at the trail. And if you really can, milfordtrail.org. Look at milfordtrail.org, or just, if you can spare a few shekels, you know, any amount of money you can spare, just send a check, Town Hall, for the Milford Trail. Help out all the people who are using it. And thank you for everything you've done.
You're welcome.
We'll wait for next year to see a new update and see what else you've added. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, which I'm sure 2 or 3 are walking the trail.
Hopefully not at night.
Hopefully not at night. May God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thanks for joining. And thank you for everything you're doing, even though you're the newbie at just under a decade of service.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Not too long since I've been home.